Ready? You ready to go? All right. It is August 29th, 2021 at 9:13 p.m. Eastern. Um, I am not entirely sure what to talk about tonight. So it's going to be a whole bunch of who knows. It's going to be a whole bunch of who knows tonight. Um, Last time I said that I felt that things were moving in a different direction in that I had adopted the philosophy of accepting utility beliefs, beliefs about the world that made it possible to believe in yourself enough to move forward and make progress. I had said that streams in future may appear optimistic. What I failed to take into consideration was that this is not just a time for doing little goods. This is also a time of momentous change and a personal philosophy that is more suited for a more stable time does not necessarily ensure a good outcome in a time of radical change. So we are solving two problems at once. We're solving a problem about how best to live while also solving a problem about how best to survive or navigate or influence the changing uh, from one era to the next. Um, so there's been a lot of thoughts. A lot of things seem to be. I like to make a video or write something when I've reached a plateau of some kind, and I don't consider where I am right now a plateau, but I do consider it to be a definite state. Um, and it's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of who I am as an individual. It's a little bit of who I am as a uh, participant in the economy. I, you know, I am a laborer in that I exchange my time and my effort for a salary. I'm also a public servant in that I work within the federal enterprise. I am a technologist, innovator, entrepreneur in that I work with emerging technologies and am always looking to work with new technologies as opportunities arise to be disruptive. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that I am just as just as a participant in the economy. I'm also a father uh, and a son, and I am a husband, and I'm a great many other things to other people, but those are the big ones. Um, I'm also a creature. I'm a biological creature who experiences a biological condition, biochemical condition, and I am uh, I guess you would say, believer. I have beliefs about the world, so I participate in systems of belief. So there's a lot of things that I am, and all those things interact with one another in unusual, unique ways. Um, Given the time period and the circumstances. So one of the things that I think I've said a few times is that I came into this believing that I would find an idea because I believed that the time warranted a profound idea that at this point in the history of the planet, we are in need of means to conceive and understand our environment and our planet and our nation, country, and society um, in ways that allow us and encourage us to behave rightly, whatever that may be. So that means that there is a right answer. You know, there is a right way that we should be behaving and believing, and that I, as an individual, have the opportunity to not only initiate that idea, but own it and carry it through, and attach myself to it, and lead on its behalf. There's a lot there to unpack. Those last few things, I think, um, threw me for a loop at one point because while I understood um, the need for behavior to change, I saw that as starting as an idea. I saw that as being a potential source of power or profit. So if you're going to influence the world in some way, you have to influence the world in some way by communicating and instilling an idea. And if you are the communicator and you are the one who instills an idea or manages the idea, operationalizes it, then you can or ought to be or should be or can be or maybe in some way regarded equal to the idea as an individual, either as a leader or an influencer or a living, piece of history. Um, I felt that there was greatness to achieve with respect to proposing a new means of thinking about the world that would result in a better future, which may or may not be true, but the fact that I pursued it and recognized it and felt that it was part of this experiment or this undertaking was concerning to me because I felt unable to split those two things. I much more now feel able to split those things. In fact, in doing so, I've recognized something about ideas and leadership that I never recognized before, which is that, for one, ideas and leaders who champion those ideas are selfish in a way that um, I did not previously understand. They are uh, ideas have a way of centralizing power in some way or another. Um, an idea about the right way to shape things implies that there is a shaper, and that that shaper is the right shaper for the shaping of those things. Um, it implies an institution that can be empowered, or an individual that can be empowered, or a way of thinking about the world that empowers some at the expense of others. So there's always a power that is created when a new and powerful idea is proposed, and that power is always creates some kind of imbalance, creates a higher than and lower than that might not have been there before. Um, you can use these ideas to affect change that may be beneficial to some degree at some point in some place. But these ideas and these institutions will outlive the problem that they were implemented to solve. They will outlive the people who implement them. Ideas have a staying power that people don't. As organisms, as biological creatures, we unfortunately have a expiration date. Ideas do not. Um, they may be more appropriate for one time than another. They may be more charitable at one time than another. They can change over time, but they never really go away, um, which is a problem. So if you're talking about the potential to deeply influence imbalance over time, ideas are that thing. Ideas are that thing that can start to pool resources at one point and never really cease to pool resources. And when it comes time to implement a new idea, often parts of the old idea are taken that are the most potent and reorganized under the new idea. So somebody once said, "There's nothing in this world as powerful as an idea whose time has come," and that is absolutely true to a point. So, yes, ideas are potent, more powerful than individual human beings, and individual human beings can introduce and posit ideas to benefit from some of that power individually and become leaders or dictators or incredibly wealthy. You can enter into a history book by proposing some idea that has staying power and resonates with the general public. You will change the world in some fundamental way that may set it off balance in the long run. Um, the reason why ideas are not quite so powerful. So I just made the case that ideas are the most powerful thing, right? Well, the reason that they are not powerful is because ideas exist in sort of a fake world. And we live more and more and more in that fake world as time goes on. We communicate with one another and express ideologies and platforms, and we have public discourse, and we bounce ideas off of one another, and we produce blog posts, and we produce media, videos, video games, movies, television shows, books, journals, magazines. We produce content continually, and the idea is we've all seen it, that if you want to be a part of influencing the world in some way, it all takes place in this realm of ideas, in this realm of shaping language to affect change. Um, well, that's all well and good, and interesting things happen though when you spend all of your time in this fake world. Everything that I have, all the time that I've spent talking into a camera, and putting this information out on YouTube, um, could have been spent doing something in my community that made a material impact on someone. And that's really the shame, right? Is that when we feel compelled to participate in some small way in an ever larger forum for discourse, we shy away from the environments that we may have a larger impact. Right now, I'm contributing something very, 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 very small to a very, 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 very big discussion, hoping to influence it in some way. But what I could be doing instead is I could be making very small actions that have a very big impact in my community. Um, and I've thought about this quite a bit. Is it my community that needs help in this moment? I don't know. I don't. I don't suspect that the town in which I live, the city in which I live, desperately needs the help of volunteers, to help save the world from this, that, or the other. I think that this particular community is doing fine. I think that it accrues a lot of taxes and therefore takes care of itself. But that is not really the right way to think about it anyway. Even if my community is doing well, there are things about the future that I'm concerned about that I should be participating in my community to solve. Because what if we do come up with, um, if we're a little further ahead and we don't have to worry about feeding the homeless on our main street every day, then maybe we can start thinking about ways to um, take preventative actions against potential future disasters. Um, we could be leading the way in changing the way that communities respond to climate change, or uh, what's the word I'm thinking of? Divergent political uh, platforms, radicalization. Um, so ultimately, there is a case to make to say that you should invest your time in doing things. I'm probably not going to be able to, now that I, realizing I'm getting kind of tired, I'm probably not going to be able to walk everybody through my thought process there. So I apologize. I'll have to do that some other time. But more and more, I'm seeing that where I originally came into this from the perspective of bringing glory to myself, claiming power and recognition and fame and historical significance to myself, really did clamor for participating in shaping ideologies. However, even though the ideologies are powerful, they really only seem to serve that purpose of throwing things off balance in the favor of some institution or another. Whereas doing real meaningful work in your community only ever always has a positive impact on things without throwing off balance. So there's a lot of strength in doing the small things. And I think that really is where the answer to life is in doing the small things to shape and uphold and protect your community, whatever you consider your community to be. When you feel the need to shape and control larger domains, then it is an idea or an ideology or a philosophy or a platform or politics that becomes a necessary component in wrangling such a large body, because you need some vision in order for people to all march in the same direction without having continual instruction. But when you're doing that, you're also sort of making other people work for you. You're putting an idea out there, and you're really just manipulating folks to go in a direction on your behalf. It might be a good direction, but again, it will throw things out of balance. And possibly the reason that it will throw things out of balance is because you're getting something for nothing. You are contributing an idea, and people are marching, living their real lives in the direction of that idea, without your continued involvement and investment in sustaining that effort or participating in that effort yourself. So it really is sort of like a compounding interest of politics. You know, an ideology is compounding interest. It is passive income for power. And over time, those types of things can definitely create an imbalance. So, you know, it is the right thing to do if what you want is power. If what you want is power, then what you need to execute is some ideology. Um, the question is, can the world benefit from ideology? Well, you can pull yourself out of a hole by getting people united under a banner and rowing in the same direction. But once they're out of that hole, that idea will not go away. You will continue marching down that path, whether you want to or not. And therefore, it's very difficult to say whether an idea, in the long run, does benefit society. It has its uses, but it is a power that cannot be so easily controlled. It does not have a shelf life. It does not have an expiration date. If set loose in some environment, if it thrives in that environment, then it will conquer it and move on to more. It's invasive. Um, but when you work hard in your environment and you do your best for the people you care about or the people who are around you, that is an appropriate amount of investment that takes your time and ends when it ends, and your influence goes with you. But in the meantime, you're contributing just as much to change and influence and help society as anybody else, which means that it won't necessarily go out of balance. It won't necessarily go too far in the direction that you're pushing it because everybody else is pushing at the same time. And if everybody's pushing a little bit at the same time, then ultimately society is going to go in the direction that everybody chooses. It's like a Ouija board, right? So doing the little things in your community is absolutely the best way to go about it. Now, here's the problem. If I were to put that into a book and say, look, don't go around telling people what you think the world ought to be. Just work hard in your community. Take care of people who are struggling. You know, be there for the poor, the elderly, the sick, the widowed. Be there for children. You know, give them food. Don't turn anybody away when they need something. You know, always work hard and take care of others, and don't rest if there's a need. And you know, don't brag about what you do, but do things and know that you know good will come from it because of what you're doing. If I were to write all those things down in a book um, and put my name on it, people might get confused. People might think that my name means something. No, no, that's no. Um, so therein lies the challenge. This is right action and right behavior that should be taking place that really is difficult to understand at first. When you can see how clearly powerful concept of an idea is, of language influence, speech writing, public discourse, speech making, what's the word I'm looking for, presentational, charismatic, I don't know, whatever. When you see the influence of words and media and messages and stories and you know, production, it becomes really easy to understand that words are power and that you can grab power with words. The problem is we've all caught that bug. We've all seen it, and now we all endlessly vomit words and media and messages into a sea of vomit. Um, this is just how we spend our time now, is trying to come up with an idea. When I was little, I was a big fan of Benjamin Franklin because he wrote so much. Nothing that he wrote was essentially profound, but he wrote so much and so often that some of the things that he said carried weight, or some of the things that he wrote carried weight. And he became well known just for being so prolific of an author or producer or editor. Um, and so in that regard, I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be so prolific that eventually I thought I would arrive at the ultimate thought. And that is sort of the experiment that we're currently doing, is that collectively we're billions of monkeys at typewriters, and we will arrive at the ultimate thought. We will write Shakespeare eventually in this. If this stays keeps up, we will get there just by sheer brute force. But I still genuinely don't believe that it is the realm of ideas which will make the difference. It is the collective action, collective understanding of collective action that makes the difference. And that's as much, the funny thing is, it's sort of an individual journey. I'm going on that individual journey, and I can't necessarily do that for anybody else. Because if I were to drop a text for somebody that says, this is how you should live, um, that could be their starting point, and they could never go through any of the things that I've gone through in this series. And therefore, they may not arrive at a right understanding of things because they think still that there's some power in some idea or the person who gave them that idea, as opposed to ideas are an anathema to progress, to progress in the sense of taking care of other human beings and ensuring other human beings are cared for, reducing human suffering, uh, creating value for other human beings in their lives. And then things start to get really abstract because, again, what are we doing here? I think what we're doing here is we're trying to make a profitable experience for human beings around the globe. And I think the reason for that is because as an individual, I don't believe that it is in my interest in the long term to divide and conquer for my immediate benefit. Um, if I were to do that, now to be fair, I could divide and conquer. I could create ideas, ideologies, platforms, dictatorships that would serve, at the very least, my children up until they're my age. But this is such a short view of reality. Um, I don't want to create a world that is difficult or troubling or traumatic for my grandchildren's grandchildren. Um, why do I think that way? That's a good question. As a parent, I recognize that it's my responsibility for my children's well-being because I'm the one who made the choice for them to enter this world. It is my responsibility and uh, my duty. I don't want to say the word my fault, but it is my doing that they're here. And so if they're going to raise children, then it will be their responsibility that their children are here, and my responsibility that they were here. So for every generation that continues, there is responsibility. So to some degree, I would say that all of my ancestors have responsibility for my well-being because it was their choice that I'm here. Just like it is my responsibility for all of my descendants that they're cared for because it was my choice to bring them into the world to continue this experiment, this process. Uh, there's no there's no abdicating that responsibility. It is very much a choice to bring life into the world. Um, so no, I don't feel that you can step away from that responsibility. And more than that, it will require more than just my descendants to provide a quality of life for my descendants. It will also be their neighbors and their families and their relatives and their communities, their societies, their classmates, their community of faith. All of those people will help to shape the lives of my descendants. And therefore, to some degree, there is a necessity to care for a community. And more, we are a global community. More and more, we have the ability to negatively or positively, in huge ways, influence the well being of others around the globe. Not least of which global warming. That seems to be the big one, and that seems to be the case study for all of the philosophies that I've entertained this year is global warming. How does this philosophy apply to address or survive global warming? That's a big one. But not only that, uh, colonialism, extractive, exploitative, economic outsourcing, third world and first world economies, or thermonuclear war, bombing, proxy wars, all of this kind of stuff. Um, we have definitely the ability to make very small changes that have very profound impacts on a global community half a world away. So if I care about my descendants' well-being, which it is, I would argue, is my very much my responsibility to care about because of the choices that I've made, then I need to protect them or be concerned about the repercussions that they may experience on a global scale across generations. So again, if my descendants live on this part of the world for 7 generations, and for 4 generations they're doing really great because they're bombing the hell out of this side of the world, then guess what? Generations 6 and 7 are going to get bombed back. So, or they might move, who knows? Like, this is not, you can't just win, at some point, because the show goes on. Show goes on. There will always be another act. And what goes around comes around. Anything that you put into the world will come back. And it will come back for those who you have brought into this world. It will come back on those to whom you are responsible, personally responsible. So anything that you put into the world will come back at some point on your children or your children's children or your children's children's children. And all of those individuals' well-being are wholly your responsibility because it was your choice to take the action to make their lives possible. That's pretty simple, right? That's pretty simple stuff. It's pretty simple. So yeah, when we talk about why care about other people, I think that's pretty obvious. Now, it might have been a different equation before I was a parent because this would be more notional as opposed to real. I am now invested in the future, permanently invested in the future, forever, because so long as humanity survives, which is my hope, there may be my descendants in that mix. And if ever humanity ceases to survive, then it will be my fault. Whatever suffering occurs at the end of the line for my descendants because I put them there. So I'm in. I got skin in the game. Yeah, there's a lot to that. All right. Big ideas are great for acquiring power, but they send things off balance, and what starts off balance will stay off balance. It is a passive income of power. You tell people to go do things, and then they go and do those things without your continuing influence. Those ideas will outlive you. They will participate in the lives of your descendants in profound ways, and what goes around comes around. Therefore, do small things in your community, live well, take care of others. Again, if you write these things down and put them in a book, somebody might find that book and claim it as an ideology or an idea that for whatever reason, justifies an imbalance of power, and then there you go. Um, Switch gears for a second and talk about money, economy. Um, I was thinking about Tesla earlier today, and how we right now we seem to talk about Elon Musk a lot as a out of touch billionaire. One of the heads that we want to roll, right? Because why should there be billionaires? Um, One of the space race folks, one of the sort of out of touch technologists whose parents owned an exploitative emerald mine in apartheid South Africa, and therefore was the reason why he was able to participate in the tech sector. But even so, looking at all of that, um, I still believe that it is the sign of a healthy economy or a healthy nation with inclusive, pluralistic institutions and economics that a relative newcomer to an industry can find a foothold and change the way an industry works. So there was not much in the way of discussion of electric vehicles prior to Tesla on the main stage. It was always there, but it always seemed to be very much under the thumb of existing car manufacturers or or the oil industry at large, the energy sector. Um, I remember going to Borders in high school, and there was like a full page thing about how uh, hydrogen engines explode. They're just like anytime anybody posited any alternative to gasoline powered engines, they just got blown out of the water. And so it took an Elon Musk, I guess, to come in and find a technology that was already there, that seemed marketable, that seemed profitable, that whose time has come, and champion it, invest in it, and fund it. I'm defeating my own case as I'm making it. It was money that caused Tesla to happen. So I was trying to say that it is the sign of a healthy economy that there can be a disruptive technology, creative disruption that can come in and be more profitable in the next generation and change the dynamic of a particular industry such that what was previously established power recedes in favor of a new power that brought creative disruption. So that's good. That is a very healthy, good sign. We need more of that. We always need more of that. And the electric car craze could have been that, but the more I think about it, it's not actually. Somebody came in and threw their weight around with some money to push it in that direction, but if it weren't for that happening, it probably wouldn't have taken off at all. Because again, I think it was decades of we could do this, but the status quo just wouldn't have it. And even now, like it's so strange that one of I don't know, 5 electric trucks that are coming out in like the first generation of electric trucks is an F-150, Ford F-150. It's just so strange. And maybe, like we're talking about how we're going to power electric vehicles, it might be that we've worked some deals on the back end. How do you generate electric power? Are we really moving away from fossil fuels in any significant way? Have we really changed the dynamic of power in the energy sector? Where is the power coming from? Is it clean energy? That doesn't seem to be a part of the conversation when we talk about electric vehicles. It's not you're going to have an electric vehicle which will be powered by an electric station, which will be powered by clean energy. There's the electric vehicle, and it's Tesla, and we're gonna put some places out there for you to charge it. And man, it's the future. It doesn't necessarily represent a shift away from fossil fuels toward clean energy. I mean, it could. It's definitely a step, you know, toward making that happen. But as we disentangle one dependence on oil, are we reproducing another infrastructure that is dependent on oil. That'd be interesting, right? If like, whoa, well, we got our chargers all across the nation, but man, they're really deeply entwined with this fossil fuel infrastructure that powers them. That would be interesting. That would be interesting. Creative disruption. The ability for players to enter a market with a good idea and sell their good idea to a public who is willing to buy it, instead of or in place of supplanting a previous reigning product or monopoly or oligopoly that no longer can compete in the light of the new technology. That's good. That's healthy. That's where progress comes from. That's where economic success comes from. That's how countries become wealthy, and that's how people in those countries live well. That's how you have a thriving middle class. If such a thing, if such a terminology actually really means anything, um, it's good. It's how you shift away from exploitative, extractive economies. It's how you shift away from oligopoly and oligarchy. It's how you um, avoid the catastrophes that occur when people start to when a large portion of the population starts to lose the means to care for itself or live adequate lives. Eventually something's got to give, right? We're seeing that now. It's obvious that we can't just restructure our thinking about the economy and about power in our country and change the course of history from its current path. Thinking about it doesn't change things. Seeing it in a new light, feeling good about Elon Musk or Tesla, doesn't change the fact that we are on a dangerous path and that powers are appearing left and right, coming out of the woodwork to scoop up public approval, public opinion, popular movements, and wrest some of this what's become extractive institutions from the private sector or from existing political um, institutions and take them for themselves. It, moments like this, we've built things so top heavy that it's become very attractive to unscrupulous folks like Donald Trump, who have no qualms in destroying democracy in order to take uh, the great wealth and great power that our current politicians enjoy through our extractive political institutions, which were built by a deregulated private sector that resulted in deeply extractive private institutions. The blood is in the water. All right, so what do we do about that? We live our good lives in our local environment. We fight extraction by reinvesting in our local communities, right? If we are caring for one another, if we're spending our times focusing on our communities and ensuring that our communities are strong, then wealth isn't being extracted, right? Because our labor isn't being exploited, and we're not purchasing things that the profit thereof leaves the community. Easier said than done because, again, our infrastructure is entirely dependent on things that exist outside of our community. Our food, our energy, our water, gasoline, whatever you want to, like anything. It's not produced there in your neighborhood, and it's not produced by your neighbors. It's produced elsewhere. Well, anyway, I'm growing tomatoes. I'm doing a really bad job of picking them, though. There's just too many other things going on in my life right now for me to be. I bought 4 tomato plants. I thought, I don't know, how many tomatoes would that be? 50 on 4 plants? It's like cherry tomatoes. It's been like, at this point, I would say 1,000 tomatoes. Oh, and I've been so bad about picking them. I did okay at first. but I have 2 kids, and you can see there's other things that I could be spending my time on, and I do. I don't mean to give the impression that every opportunity that I have to step away and think, I do, and I try to record it so that I can remember it again later. So you have seen all of the free time that I have had. I've been here. Um, don't spend your time crafting thoughts to spread across the globe and capitalize on people's time you've never met. Spend your time on small actions, investing real, actual work, time, and sweat in your local community to make sure that the people in your environment are cared for. I always love the quote from the movie 10,000 BC, where one of the tribal elders was talking to this young leader in the tribe about his father. His father ran away. And the tribe elder said, "Your father didn't run away. He went to go find help. For they were having some trouble." And he said, "A man draws a circle around the people he cares for, that he um, that he protects and looks after. And a bigger, his family, his children, his wife. A bigger man draws a bigger circle. His neighborhood, his community, his tribe." And he said, "Your father was a man who drew a very big circle that had many, many people in it." So the idea was, this is a man who was a leader and a caretaker for a nation, essentially. So it gives you the impression that when you lead many people, you are a bigger person. When you care for many people, you have a bigger heart. That's true. That's true. But caring for many people, caring for many, 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 many people, is not the same thing as directing many, 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 many people. You could be someone who directs many, many, many people because you care about only a few people. Because if you care about only a few people, the best way to benefit those few people is to direct the actions of many people on their behalf. So it doesn't necessarily reflect how many people you care about, uh, how many people you lead. You can lead many people and care about few. You can care about many people and lead few. And I'm thinking more and more that the right answer is the latter. That to properly care for many, many, many people is to take responsibility for leading few of them. We're at a time when it's very attractive for somebody, for many reasons, it's very attractive for somebody to try to stand up and take control of this whole shebang. And if they did, they would be remembered forever. And there's a good chance that they could come away from this with a fairly good reputation. It might be possible, where we are now, that you could move the needle a little bit in the right direction, and over the course of a generation. We could see one of the greatest rulers of humanity, leaders of humanity in this coming generation. Because so much is wrong, so much needs to be done, and there's a global community and many, many, many platforms. This is the time to make history, right? But why do you want that? Do you want that because you really, 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 really want that page in the history book? You want your face to be there? You want your flesh to be printed in book after book after book? You want people to have the syllables, the sound of your name in their mouth forever? Sounds pretty cool, right? Comes at a cost. Comes at a cost. You'll introduce ideas that will eventually, in no uncertain terms, be the blade at the neck of your grandchild's 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 grandchild. You put something out there in the world, and it doesn't go away. It just changes shape over time. What goes around comes around. um, the synthesis of these ideas. Still really enjoying this book. Still haven't finished it. There's just it's impossible to read quickly. I blew through the first half because I was just absorbed. But then at some point, like it became just so real that every new concept or case study or chapter echoed through all the other ones and real life. And it just takes such time to properly process all of these individual case studies and think about how they fit in the context of the entirety of human history and how they fit into the context of what's happening right now. Um, what did I looked up something recently that was like I wanted a counterpoint to this because this is so compelling. This is so compelling that I was like, clearly I'm being sold a bill of goods because case study after case study, they've made the case for some very simple premises on how to govern human society. And I'm like, I want a counterpoint for this. I need to hear the other side. I need to hear some other conceptualization of history because there is no such thing as an idea that is so simple and pervasive and true in all cases. And so when I went to go looking for a counterpoint to this book, a response, rebuttal, some reaction to this text that paints history in a slightly more complex light, I saw that one of the authors responded to the January 6th insurrection because, of course, that's why I would buy a book that's called Why Nations Fail, right? Was because ours was. He said, I'm surprised it hasn't happened already. I'm surprised it took this long. And the reason he said that was because they outlined in the book how we get to this place. We get to this place from extractive institutions, extractive political institutions, which lead to, no, sorry, extractive economic institutions, which lead to extractive political institutions because politicians seek to consolidate power by leveraging the inequality machines that have been built. And how does that occur in the first place? Deregulation, the ability to amass wealth and dominate in a sector of the economy, push out competition. The Rockefeller thing of if somebody opens a gas station, you just open one right across the street and charge less until they go out of business. Easy peasy. The oligopoly of what used to be the monopoly of AT&T, Ma Bell. Everybody was on AT&T, and so they broke them up. Antitrust. And now we have oligopoly where, you have Verizon or Comcast or whoever else, and they just charge what they want because they don't operate in each other's districts. They say, you stay over there and charge as much as you want. I'll stay over here and charge as much as I want. We just won't interact. We won't be a monopoly, but we won't interact. There will not be any competition. If there was somebody entering the market to compete, then they would be flushed out because there's enough institutional resistance there to new ideas. So creative disruption doesn't become possible. When creative disruption isn't possible, then you can't have a thriving middle class. And your economy as a whole doesn't move forward. You become stagnant. If you're plugging your ears to new potential innovations, you're not going to stay in business very long. I mean, you can control some part of that, right? But China. So it's not good for the long haul, and people will get upset, and the country will start to struggle. The individuals in the country will start to struggle, and eventually somebody will say, "Let's take this sucker back." And everybody will cock their shotgun and go to work. And the outcome of it will not be good in the immediate sense or in the long-term sense. Because I doubt that we're going to end up right back with inclusive institutions. So the society needs to be ideologically pluralistic. It needs to be conducive to entrepreneurship. There needs to be strong checks and balances of economic power to ensure that newcomers in the economy are in several technology sectors are propped up. And I always had a problem with, as a developer of a novel technology in the government space, I was always upset that, why are we always putting everything out on contract? Why can't we why won't you invest in me? Like, I'm here, I'm trying to do some cool stuff. Like, why is it that, like, it's so easy to just go send money out the door? But it's so hard to just, like, give me the money. I'm already here. You're already paying for me, like, just put it under the uh, on the check, right? For emerging technology instead of for whatever else you've got me here doing PowerPoints or something. Um, but I now appreciate that there's a difference between the startups and the big boys. Encouraging startups, thriving startups is good. So every once in a while, you'll see me wearing a shirt that says the Capital Factory. That's an interesting case study. I encourage you to look up and learn as much as you can about the Capital Factory in Austin, Texas. The Capital Factory is a place where the government is trying to involve itself in the affairs of novel independent entrepreneurs of innovative technologies. Those innovators who come to the table with novel technologies which are disruptive in their respective markets come to the Capital Factory not only to try to involve themselves with government contracts, but also to meet venture capitalists, because venture capital is how these startups get off the ground. Venture capitalists are not looking for a place to turn money into technology. They're looking for a place to turn money into more money. So the relationships that indie developers have with venture capitalists is complicated. The venture capitalist gets the indie developer off the ground and gets them to a point where they have reached the appearance of profitability. At which point the venture capitalist now says, aha, I've been with this from the beginning and I have grown my share of the investment tenfold. Let's go public or let's sell this off. One way or another, I'm going to take my cut. I'm going to go do it again. I've got a good eye for investing in emerging technology. I can continue to do this forever and see an immense return on my investment. If I were to stick with this guy for the long run, then I would be subject to all of their, ups and downs as they exist in the market as a product. And that's not what I'm here for. I'm just here to, invest and then take my investment back tenfold. So what ends up happening is these individuals, there's this hype train where, woo, we finally made it. Yeah, we're becoming a real thing. All right, this is the future. And then as soon as it's like, man, a lot of people can be convinced that this is where things are going, that's when the original guys pull their money out because they've sold the idea. That was their intent, was to sell their idea. So now this technology has the opportunity to enter into the marketplace, and it may succeed, it may not. But usually, by and large, what happens is if it genuinely is a promising emerging technology, the buyer who buys out that original venture capitalist is probably somebody who's already entrenched in that sector of the marketplace, already entrenched in that technology domain. So if you have, like, oh my gosh, here is somebody who's coming to the table and they're going to make some computer that's going to blow Microsoft out of the, or some operating system that's going to blow Microsoft out of the water. It's like Windows on steroids. Um, if it starts to gain traction, the person who invested their venture capital in there in the first place, they are out of there. And guess who's going to take their place? Microsoft. So that's not creative disruption, is it? If here's a new, like, man, we're going to tear this market apart, and as soon as it becomes a threat, it gets bought by the person who already dominates that market. That's not creative disruption. Sorry, that's creative daydreaming, maybe. Um, mm-mm, because you haven't changed where the money goes. You haven't changed how the money flows at all. So as long as we have this pattern of venture capitalists investing in technologies until they become ripe and then being sold off to the major players in that market domain already. And then we have those major players spending the money that they get from uh, off the back of these new startups that they've acquired, these new intellectual properties that they've acquired, to buy one another out and merge their holdings into larger and larger controlling, majorities in their respective marketplaces. As long as the money stays where it is, the creative disruption is a pipe dream. It's not real, and people will experience the effects of that. So yeah, you can be a startup. You can come up with a cool technology. What happens when you are not going to sell to Microsoft? What happens when you become a genuine competitor to Netflix or Google or Apple or AT&T or Dow Chemical, whatever, Tesla, um, and you don't sell to them? You're going to sell to them because otherwise you're going away. That is not a free market, and that is not inclusive economic institutions, and that is not how uh, a society thrives. That's not how our GDP grows, and it's not how the well-being of our individual citizens grows. So this is the train that needs to turn around. Now we're talking about some, real, genuine existential threat to specifically our nation. Extractive economic institutions and extractive political institutions that leverage them and build power off of them. More regulation is necessary. Antitrust needs to be reinstated. Better protocol and policing against identifying and disrupting oligopolies and monopolies, and some sort of reform on mergers and acquisitions to turn back the clock a few decades and prevent the predatory behaviors of venture capitalists and companies seeking to protect their share in a marketplace against emerging technologies from smaller producers. All of that needs to change right now. We're not doing ourselves any favors. Um, I don't think that's me espousing an ideology. I think that's me identifying a problem and saying, look, this is what I see as being the reality of history and of our present moment, and these are things that need to change. I guess that means I need to change them, right? Because I said at the beginning of the video that you can't just go out and say, this is how things should be. Problem is, I am individually perhaps too small to take on something of that scale. Um, and if that's the case, don't I need an army? And if I need an army, don't I need to use ideology to police it, to push it in the right direction? Yeah, but careful, right? Because you push, and that push will never stop pushing. Um, what goes around comes around. I think it's okay to push in the direction of inclusivity. I think it's okay to push in the direction of pluralism. I think it's okay to push against extractive economic or political institutions and to push against exploitation. I think those are perfectly fine pushes to make in the long term. You can push as hard as you want on any of those things, and you won't ever spin things in the wrong direction. Likewise, you can always push towards investing your time, effort, and energy firsthand in caring for the people around you and your local environment. However, as soon as you start writing any of this stuff down, you risk consolidating power in some ideological platform or text, which can later be abused as a symbol to justify somebody else's rise to power or the exploitation of some other that somebody develops referencing your material. All right. So, what can I do? Care for my people. Care for my neighbors. Care for my family. Care for my land. Care for my dog, my animals, um, survive. Um, what can I do about the country? Well, there are some challenges that were identified, and I believe that those are things that can be pushed against. But it's not just me. So in this realm, I rely on communicating messages and ideas, which is dangerous. I have to make sure that any idea that I put out there can be pushed ad nauseum for eternity and not go in the wrong direction. Uh, so I have to scope them, right? Like it's like making a wish with a genie. You have to be very specific. You can't just apply this to every circumstance. And then three, the existential threat that we are provided with on a global uh, uh, species scale, which is global warming. No more than species; it's all species on the planet. The whole thing. Um, Global warming is an immense challenge that I'm not ready to speak to, um, because so much action needs to be taken so quickly that in order to enforce such widespread action would require immense consolidation of power. And I am not willing to advocate for such a thing. However, I can say, for what it's worth, that as humans, we can individually do our part. Einstein said of Gandhi, I believe that Gandhi's views were the most enlightened um, of all people alive in our time. We should strive to do things in his spirit, not through violence emphatic to our cause, but by non-participation in anything we believe is evil. So if you believe that something that you do contributes to climate change, global warming, then you should cease doing that thing. So I have to stop blogging. I have to turn my computer off, to turn the lights off, and turn the air conditioning off, and stop consuming power, right? Non-participation in anything you believe is evil. And if you believe the end of the world, if you believe suffering for the people under your charge, for to whom you are responsible, which is again all humans in perpetuity if you have children, um, then you should do your part. What to do about British Petroleum? What to do about the ocean being on fire, pipelines rupturing, spilling hundreds of millions of gallons of crude oil into the Gulf of Mexico? What to do about hmm, the ocean's been through a lot recently, hasn't it? All right, I don't know. I don't know because anything I tell you to go do to BP um, will come around, right? And any consolidation of power will come around. So it's hard. This is hard. It's hard stuff. We need to solve the problem without creating another one. Easier said than done. Maybe that should be the next book I read. I already have my next books lined up. It's taken me too long to finish this one. I've been flirting with Framer's Coup. I've read the first section of Framer's Coup, but I'm like, nah, I'm not going to really get into that until I finish this one because this one is the long view. Um, we already kind of know the story of the United States, but I just am so looking forward to being able to talk specifics about how we ended up much more conservative in the age of enlightenment or in the age of individual liberty. How did we end up with plantation owners owning slaves? How did we end up with only the landed gentry could vote in the age of individual liberty, of rule of law, equal representation, equal rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Interesting, interesting stuff. Of course, the United States has a dual heritage, right? You can see that in our flag and how it relates to the same symbols that came before in imperialist private companies. Anyway, extractive institutions. Fun, 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 fun. We got here on purpose. All right. everybody, thank you for listening to me for an hour and 5 minutes. If you did, I'm gonna go to bed. I think. Uh, I'm not tired. This has been fun. This has been a good evening. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for. I guess I'm saying thank you to myself for sitting down and doing this. This was good. All right. Have a good one. Good night.